Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Enrique Zuniga. I will be chairing this meeting of the Commission today. With us is Chairman Crosby remotely, but I am pleased to call to order the meeting number 235 of the Gaming Commission on our offices at our offices on February 7th. I want to make sure we establish that Commissioner Crosby is meeting and can hear as well. His attendance here is unreasonably difficult, which is why he's joining us by phone. Chairman Crosby, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine, Commissioner Zuniga. Thank you very much. Needless to say, I'm sorry not to be there. I had skipped the first 3 days of my family reunion to be there last week, but couldn't get there. We just didn't found out about this big development last night. There was just no way I could get back, but I'm pleased to be able to participate from afar, and thank you for taking over the chairmanship.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. This clearly turned out to be a working vacation for Chair Crosby. We can hear you well because of remote participation. All votes that we take at this commission meeting will be done by roll call. So we will go to the first item on the agenda, the approval of the minutes.
Yes, Mr. Acting Chairman. I move that we approve the minutes of the meeting of January 18th, 2018, as they appear in the packet, subject to correction for typographical errors and for other unmaterial matters.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I did have a comment on one item that I'd just like to bring up, and maybe we could just review the record at a later time. But at around 12:30 of the minutes on page 4, it says that at the middle of the page, Commissioner Zuniga added that he did not want the Commission to accept prior history of how the IEB handled certain things as part of the determination to exempt a position. I'm not exactly sure that's in the right context. I remember my objection was to the notion that licensees might themselves petition different positions, and that could give us some kind of different approaches, and that was not going to be good. But if we could go back to that, Catherine or Ed, just to clarify, that sentence just doesn't feel like
we will
it's
check
what I
the
would like
record on that, and we can fix that.
Okay. Secondly, at a later time, at 1:20, there was discussion initiated by Chairman Crosby about the same topic, the SERs, and there was one category that was added by consensus of 3 commissioners, those people who would not be in areas close to the casino floor, but perhaps say the entertainment block in the case of MGM. And that paragraph at 120 reads well as my recollection. But there was a second category that I forget as well. That we could, if we are going back to the record, if we could also include that, I would really appreciate that.
We'll check that as well.
Okay, I'll amend the motion just to incorporate those reservations by the acting chairman.
Any further questions or comments?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously. All right, second item on the agenda, Commissioner Director Bedrosian.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to change up the order of the updates slightly. On general update, I don't have anything. I will have items under both B and C, but before we do that, I'm going to move up Director Lennon for the quarterly budget update first, and then I'll go into those other 2 items if that's okay with the Commission.
That's fine by us.
Thank you, Executive Director. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I'm joined by Agnes Bollier, and we're here to present to you the second quarterly budget update for fiscal year 2018. The Massachusetts Gaming Commission approved a FY18 budget for the Gaming Control Fund of $29.15 million, which required an assessment of $24.45 million on licensees. After first quarter adjustments, roll forward of FY17 surplus revenue, and increases for hiring related to the opening of MGM, the MGC's revised approved budget is $29.7 million, requiring a $24.15 million assessment. This update is seeking approval to increase the budget by $565,000 without a corresponding increase in the assessment. The approved FY18 budget of $29.7 million is composed of 5 areas in your memo, with $19.2 million directly attributable to gaming regulatory costs. The memo and corresponding attachments details the increased request of $565,000, which is inclusive of a decrease of $85,000 in salary, pension, insurance, and indirect costs related to delayed hires and attrition, an increase of $645,000 to support mainly ongoing litigation in the legal department, and an increase of $5,000 for stenography costs. The Commission's revenue is generated from a daily fee for slot machines, licensing revenues, and an assessment on licensees. Licensing revenues to date are exceeding projections. The majority of that comes from the final cost of primary gaming vendor investigations exceeding the minimum licensing fee, and ongoing suitability investigations as well. This has resulted in an increase in revenue projections by approximately $92,000. Staff is not recommending an increase to the assessment at this time. 205 CMR 121 describes how the Commission shall assess its operational costs on licensees, including any increases or decreases as a result of over or underspending. Section 4 of that reg, paragraph 3, allows the Commission to assess additional costs if at any time the Commission determines actual costs will exceed projected revenues. MGC administration and finance staff cannot determine at this point whether actual costs will exceed actual revenues. The combined impact of the increased cost with the projected increased revenue leaves the Commission's budget with a projected deficit of about $449,000. However, the MGC has reverted funds in the Gaming Control Fund each year, and annually the reversions have exceeded the current projected deficit. In addition, a determination has not been made as to the source of funding for the training costs of the public safety personnel associated with the Category 1 facilities. Based on the information currently available, staff is recommending to not adjust the assessment on licensees until the close of the third or fourth quarter of FY18. The MGC Office of Administration and Finance has discussed this approach with the 3 licensees responsible for the assessment, and they are in agreement that they would favor waiting until the close of the fourth quarter.
Okay. I should have mentioned something as well in my opening remarks. Our stenographer is not currently, could not be here today. She's attending streaming, and we'll have a transcript of this meeting like we always do. But because they're also remotely, we should try to be slowly when we make our remarks and a little bit more clear. But thank you for that update, Director. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
Pretty straightforward.
Any comments?
Thank you, as always, for.
Thank you. It's as you mentioned, it's an important piece that we do, these quarterly updates. In the past, we've reverted monies back to licensees, but as you project, these might necessitate some revision, but we can always come back and review it at a later commission meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that,
Well, Agnes has a diversity update too.
Oh.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
In your packet, you have the Supplier Diversity Program benchmarks and the Massachusetts Gaming Commission's total spending and encumbrances to date through the second quarter. Currently, we have reached and surpassed our benchmark for the small businesses, and we are continuing to work toward our benchmark for the minority-owned businesses, which at this time we are on target to reach by the end of the fiscal year. We have at least one more encumbrance for the minority businesses that we will be preparing in the coming weeks that should bring us to our goal. Currently, we are on target for our women-owned business goals that we have set. There is also one more encumbrances that we will be adding that should bring us over the target. We are still reaching out to all of our vendors to see if they have any subcontractors that can be applied to these categories. The final category of service-disabled veterans-owned businesses remains a bit of a challenge, but we have identified a vendor for office supplies and are continuing to work with them. We are looking to use this vendor whenever it is economically prudent to do so.
Thank you for that update, Ms. Bolio. Any questions from the commissioners?
No, just a comment. You know, again, we strive to preach what we ask our licensees to go through, but I think we should take note of the fact that supplier diversity office for the state regularly commends you, commends Jill Griffin and Derek Shop for their efforts to set an example in terms of outreach to diverse suppliers. So kudos for your continued good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thanks.
So with that, commissioners, I will move on to the MGM opening update.
Okay.
So at a staff level, we continue to work closely with MGM Springfield's team. We have monthly senior leadership meetings at which we run down a to-do list of items with both our senior teams. MGM Springfield, as you know, I think Mr. Mathis has been here, has added leadership at such positions as security, surveillance, table games, slots, marketing, and human resources to support their opening preparations. We've started to use our office space at the actual property. Angela Smith, our lead gaming agent, is there daily and is working with MGM Springfield's heads of security, surveillance, table, and slots on a daily basis. This is really for two reasons. The advantage of having Angela there during construction is she can help identify potential issues ahead of time, and in the long run, obviously it develops great working relationships among the people who have to collaborate on a daily basis. We've also been having meetings with MGM Springfield's gaming technology about getting the slot floor up and running. Installations of slot machines may begin as early as March. Director Conley, in charge of our licensing, works closely with Mary Kate Murin at MGM Springfield on getting new senior executives licensed and preparing for what we have called the tsunami of licensing and registering employees in the next 6 months. Our legal division, General Counsel Blue and her staff is working with the IB to help promulgate the necessary regulations with enough lead time, and you will see some of those regulations today. We have started to work on recruiting and hiring new gaming agents. We're working with both the state and Springfield police to form the gaming enforcement unit that will both do licensing of gaming employees and policing of the MGM Springfield property. Both the new agents and the law enforcement will need to undergo specialized gaming training. Director Vanderlinden is working on responsible gaming commitments and having GameSense agents ready to go at opening. Director Griffin continues to work on construction and hiring commitments. In terms of upcoming issues for the commission to deal with, here's what I see on the short-term radar. Regulations. Assume you will see newer updated regulations at most of our meetings. Service employee exemptions. We are working with MGM to finalize suggestions to positions the commissions to exempt from service employees. I anticipate Director Conley making a presentation to the commission later this month. In March, I anticipate a presentation by Ombudsman Ziemba and Construction Manager Delaney, who've been reviewing both the construction and licensing commitments. Sometime after that, potentially in April, the commission will have to approve a final design of the gaming establishment. And you also need a final approval of what the gaming establishment boundaries and the gaming floor boundaries are. In summary, staff continues to work diligently at making sure we can fulfill our regulatory duties to open MGM Springfield on time. If you have any questions for me, happy to answer.
Just two quick comments. First of all, Director Griffin has also been working with the head of the Regional Employment Board and a group of stakeholders around operational workforce issues. They're meeting on a monthly basis. I think having another meeting scheduled at the end of this month, actually after we maybe give some clarity on some of the SER positions. I also had the chance to chat with Director Vanderlinden the other day because his team was responsible for doing employee surveys as people were coming through to get licensed. So we're going to meet on that topic shortly, but people that were coming through that were obviously at a point of employment that they were coming to us for fingerprinting, go through a series of questions on a tablet talking about what were you doing before you came here, what was your level of training, and some of the other baseline measurements we have as to the effectiveness of the efforts to hire locally and recruit locally. But so just, I guess,
Yeah,
two addendums to
thank
your
you
report.
to make sure I did not shortchange both directors, Vanderlinden and Griffin. They are obviously doing very important and busy work.
Ed, you mentioned on your remarks that would be approving the design. There's also a schedule element to this
Yeah.
approval that will be, and based on the review that we'll be conducting in March. Is
Sure,
that
yeah,
correct?
that sort of tracks through to the opening date.
Right.
And there are some milestones, and Ombudsman Ziemba and Construction Manager Delaney are very much on top of that. But yeah, I would anticipate that sometime in March or April. And we probably will do a meeting in Springfield sometime, potentially in April also.
Yep. Yeah.
Or we'll suggest a meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, plenty of time
Absolutely.
for us to figure out. But there's a lot going on over in Springfield and here as a result of all that ramp up that clearly continues. Other questions?
Commissioner Zuniga,
Yes.
Commissioner, I just had one point. I couldn't quite hear Commissioner Stebbins. He may have referred to this, but just for the record, I think it's important for people to know that also our research team, headquartered at UMass Amherst, is completing its complete baseline research on issues like problem gaming in the host and surrounding communities, and then all the other issues that we've been studying, like crime rates and property values and unemployment and so forth. We're completing the building of that database of 5 to 10 years of data on those issues so that we could track those issues going forward. And that has to be completed, like all these other things, that has to be completed prior to the opening of MGM Springfield, and it will be.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's part of the unique aspect of this research is that there's both statewide and targeted samples that are very relevant to the area around the casino, the host and surrounding communities. And there's quite a bit of research that is coming up in the next few months as well as we close this fiscal year. Thank you for that point, Mr. Chairman. Other questions from commissioners or comments about the MGM review?
Okay. So with that,
Okay.
move on to the WIN investigation update.
Okay, please.
So obviously there was a significant event last night in Steve Wynn's resignation from Wynn Resorts. As for our investigation, the resignation.
Mr. Georgian, would you speak very clearly towards the mic? I want to make sure I don't miss any of your words.
Okay. Can you, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Actually,
Yep.
let me do you want to move that mic over to your side?
Let me see if I can,
Not-
hold
not
on
the
one
mic,
second. Hold on, I might be.
this one.
Let's see.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me clearly?
Wow, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Obviously, there was a significant event last night in Steve Wynn's resignation from Wynn Resorts. As for the investigation update, the resignation in the short run raises additional considerations. Those considerations include Steve Wynn's continued stock ownership, management and control influence, and brand and financial impact. These are issues that will need to be considered. I am telling you that our investigation aggressively continues, and our expectation of cooperation on behalf of our licensee is very high given the gravity of these issues. I'd like to remind you of the 4 components of the Investigation and Enforcement Bureau's review as articulated at the last meeting by Director Wells, which continue to remain relevant despite last night's developments. First, a review of the suitability of individual qualifiers, including Steve Wynn, and other qualifiers potentially involved in this matter. Second, a review of any corporate action or lack thereof contemporaneous with the alleged misconduct. The question, who knew what, when, and what, if anything, did he or she do about it? Third, the monitoring and reporting back to the commission on the corporate response, the information that is clearly now in the public domain. We will be looking at how the company from the board down handles the allegations. And fourth, a review of how the current situation potentially impacts the financial stability of the company. Our investigations and enforcement bureau is working even as we speak to get answers to these new issues and will consider Steve Wynn's resignation in their analysis. However, it will not stop their work. Indeed, Director Wells and the IEB, including the state police assigned to this investigation, recognize the urgency of getting answers so the commission can make appropriate decisions on the ongoing suitability of WinMass LLC. In the meantime, the company continues to build the project. Finally, even with our sense of urgency, investigations which need to be based on facts take time. Moving forward, the commission will be updated as appropriate. With that, I'll try and answer any questions I can, given the circumstances.
Commissioner?
Yes, Executive Director Bedrosian, I think you really did cover some of the main issues of concern, mainly that our investigation has to continue. Finding out exactly what happened when, as you put it, is really critical to any decisions we make. And I know the team has a sense that they have to move quickly, but also they know that we're expecting them to get it right. So as you just pointed out, that could take some time. So those are the things that were of concern to me, and you mentioned every single one of them. So thank you for that.
Commissioner McDonald?
I have
Oh, do you want to make a comment, Commissioner Crosby?
Go ahead. Go ahead with Commissioner McDonald. Excuse me. I thought there was a pause.
I will be very brief. Mr. Bedrosian, I thought that your statement very aptly summarized the state of the investigation and the intentions of our IEB investigative team. I spoke last week at some length. Someone suggested at excessive length about my priorities for the investigation. I would just reaffirm what I said last week, and I have total confidence in the work of Director Wells and the expanded investigative team.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Crosby, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I had a couple. One, Commissioner or Director Bedrosian, when board appointed a new CEO, I believe Matt Maddox, and a new a new board chair by the name of Wason. Do we know whether either or both of those people had any knowledge of the events of the $7.5 million settlement?
I cannot answer that this time, Mr. Chairman. That would certainly seem to be part of the ongoing investigation.
Okay. I mean, I understand the issue about, needing to be sensitive, but just to reiterate what you said, in terminology that will be familiar to many, the question, a central question is, what did the board of directors and staff know, and when did they know it about the settlement and the associated allegations? That's a critical point for us and for the public of Massachusetts to know ASAP.
Yep. One central reason why this investigation continues, as you say, we've requested documentation, as I understand it, and some of that documentation is being delivered. Is that a fair statement?
That would be the normal course in an
Yep.
investigation like this.
Commissioner Stebbins, any questions or remarks?
No, just to add, and I made this point also at the last meeting, obviously our team is conducting the investigation the way investigations are handled. I would only ask that again, that this commission be alerted if for some reason we are not receiving cooperation from any party to this investigation. That stuff should be more immediately brought to our attention, but obviously the ins and outs of the investigation we'll hear at the culmination of our team's work.
Understood.
Absolutely. Well, I for one take their comments at face value. The public remarks that Mr. Wynn feels that he could no longer continue performing his duties, his roles, given all of these allegations. But again, the question for us is broader, one about other qualifiers and how that all of those controls around protecting employees and whatnot are really implemented and followed upon. So it's only fair to continue diligently, like I know you are and you will, and in a fair way, so that we can get it right. I know there's a sense of speed here. There's a sense of urgency, but I would suggest that it's more important to understand and get things right at this point.
Understood.
Commissioner,
I just have one other point, Mr. Zuniga, if that's all right. This also has been effectively stated by Director Bedrosian, but he made a point of talking about all of the work that's going on. We had a big job in front of us with MGM. The Investigations and Enforcement Bureau had a big job in front of it just to get MGM opened on time. But I want the public to know that we have the resources available to us to do both jobs quickly and well, and we will. There's no conflict between getting MGM opened quickly, expeditiously, and with absolute integrity, while at the same time we pursue these issues to the end point also as quickly as possible.
that's totally on point, and I agree.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, it goes without stating from staff's point of view, we recognize both those things are critically important.
Right. Thanks.
Other questions or comments from commissioners on this matter?
No.
This is not a public hearing, ma'am.
This is
I'm
not a
sorry.
hearing.
Well, you're talking about the public, so will you schedule something for the public to be heard on this issue as it's been addressed? So,
As we stated last meeting, we don't have a hearing scheduled, but certainly MGC comments is our email for any public comment, and all of those emails are shared among the 5 commissioners.
Okay.
Thank you.
Duly noted. Actually, we planned on taking a break after this. There may be some questions from the press, perhaps. So we're gonna take a break, 5-minute recess, and we'll be right back. Please stay online, Mr. Chairman. All right, we are reconvening the meeting of the commission, number 235. Next item on the agenda, I believe, is Ombudsman Siemba.
Commissioners, today I provide a brief review of the 2018 Community Mitigation Fund applications we received by the February 1st deadline. My purpose here today is to give you a brief overview of the process that we're going to take to review all of these applications. I'm not planning to get into any detail regarding any one of these applications. Indeed, the review teams have yet to meet. But I just wanted to remind the commissioners and remind those in our audience what our review process will be. In total, the commission received 27 applications worth almost $9 million. Our target spending for this year is $6 million. We have approximately $10 million left in the fund that has not been awarded or otherwise allocated. Approximately $1 million of the $9 million in applications has already been planned. For example, we have a tribal technical assistance application that is a refile of an application that was awarded in 2017, but has not been utilized to date due to uncertainties regarding that project. As you'll see in your packet, we have a memo that summarizes these funding amounts, and it gives you a little detail regarding the applications that we received. It matches up the applications we received versus the program targets that we set when we established the 2018 guidelines back in December. What I'd like to do now is just work backwards a little bit. We're hoping to have determinations regarding these grant applications well before the new fiscal year, which begins on July 1st. We're hoping to get decisions well before that date so that we can help municipalities and others from a fiscal planning perspective. In order to reach that date, we're going to quickly convene our review team. The review team right now includes myself, Commissioner McDonald, Catherine Blue, Derek Lennon, Jill Griffin, Joe Delaney, Mary Thurlow. We will also ask the IEB for assistance with some of the public safety items that have been included in the applications. In addition to looking at the applications, we will also look at the waiver requests that we have received. Perhaps we will come back to the commission in short order early in our reviews to discuss the waivers with the commission. As you know, Commissioner McDonald, he, as the commission's appointee to the Community Mitigation Subcommittee, he's been attending a lot of the local community mitigation advisory committees as well as some of the other commissioners, so he'll be very helpful in our reviews as we go forward. So almost immediately, we will reach out to our licensees. Indeed, we have already forwarded the applications to the licensees, and we will ask them for their opinions of these applications. We will also reach out to the regional planning agencies to see how these applications may mesh with any regional planning plans that they're engaged in or other items that they are currently reviewing. In addition to those, we will also reach out to the Mass Department of Transportation, MassDOT. As we did last year, they were very important in the reviews that we did last year on the many transportation items that are included in our applications. As we did last year, we will put all of the applications on a very specific part of our website, and we invite public comment on any of these applications. That should be up in very short order as well. The review teams take all of those comments into consideration during our reviews, and they're also forwarded to the commissioners. After the internal reviews, we will then reach out to all of the applicants and we will invite them to meet with the review teams. And we will hope to, in the course of those review meetings, to flesh out any questions that the reviewers have and to get a general understanding of the applications. Following that, we submit a written letter of questions to each of the applicants. They respond in writing, and those are included in the packet. Indeed, if commissioners have any questions regarding the applications, either before or after these meetings, they're encouraged to talk to any of the reviewers, and we will try to get those questions answered. And certainly, after we conduct our reviews, there'll be significant questions by the commissioners. So I welcome any questions, and I think that's what we have for our review.
Thank you, John. Any questions from commissioners?
Well, I just
As usual, it's incredibly thorough. Thank you, Ombudsman Biemba.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Commissioner McDonald?
Yeah, I just might say that I'm thrilled to be on the cusp of a new season of being part of the review team. I look forward to reviewing the thousands of pages that our staff, God bless Mary Thurlow, has organized for us, and I was very impressed with everybody's work last year, and on a serious note, am in fact looking forward to participating in the process again this year.
Other questions or comments?
Thank you for all the work and very well organized. We look forward to when you have time to receive comments and then give us further details about what direction. So thanks.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that notion about all the work that goes, not just at the beginning when we receive all these applications, but there's a lot of documents that go back and forth between applicants and for these mitigation grants and our review team for clarification relative to how they apply to and connect to the casino and what can be expected, as well as other prior efforts that have been made in the past. So I know it's a great task and look forward to it. Just one question. I think you mentioned this on your remarks. There's $9 million currently in the fund, uncommitted.
$10 million in the fund that's uncommitted.
Right.
But we received, almost $9 million worth of applications.
Worth of applications, right? But those are commitments. Everything else, that doesn't mean balance. There's
That's
perhaps
exactly
a little bit
right.
more because some of those commitments are taking time to spend down. In the case of, for example, the reserves, they're not spent until we later authorize, etc.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. So we're well within.
And John,
Yes.
excuse me, John, remind us the fund begins to be replenished once MGM opens, right?
Mhm.
That's
What is
exactly
what
right.
what's the expected revenues in fiscal, what would it be, 19, I guess?
Yeah, we're being very conservative with all of our anticipated revenues, but back in December when we discussed this, we said that we could probably count on at least $1.5 million to $2 million to be deposited back into the fund for next year. So if we had $10 million roughly left in the fund, $6 million for this year's program, we would have roughly the same amount going into next year, speaking very conservatively.
Okay, good. That makes sense. Thanks.
Good reminder.
And I think that's a very good approach because we don't want to deplete it all up front, let's say, prior to the opening, counting on those revenues. Those revenues begin to escalate as money comes in. So in our yearly funding round, we need to be mindful to maintain reasonable levels of funding capacity, which I know these could effectively allow us to do.
One other point I wanted to make, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Mary for all the work that she does and the review team, but I also wanted to thank all of our local community mitigation advisory committee members from the communities and the community mitigation subcommittee and all of the advisory committees that help put this together each year. And undoubtedly, as we get close to opening MGM Springfield, we'll review a whole new can of beans on types of issues that we'll be looking at for the next funding round.
What is the next major milestone? When do we expect to come before with some funding recommendations broadly?
I think probably we might come back to the commission with some questions regarding the waiver requests that we received.
Yep.
And after we assemble and discuss the applications, perhaps we would come back on some of those waiver requests. And some of the applicants have discussed if there's any way that we could expedite the reviews because of some fiscal issues that they're experiencing. We'll have to come back with that as well.
Isn't the deadline though, John, the end of June?
We want to make sure that we have decisions before July 1st so that they can have a full fiscal year to get these grants underway.
It truly has become kind of a year-long process.
Yeah.
Not just the review, but after you make awards, there's a contract process you go through, and then it seems like you roll right into the next round of local community mitigation guideline meetings. So.
Yeah, we actually are going to do a little bit of an overlap this year, so we're going to start working on a lot of the details of next year's program this spring and into the summer. just so we can get a head start, because we'll have, like I said, a whole new group of issues going into the operations phase for MGM Springfield.
Very good. So if there's no more questions for Mr. Ziemba, we can move on to number 5, the racing division. Give you a minute to get set up. Good afternoon, Dr. Leiba.
Good afternoon. Today we have some basically standard operating procedure items for the racing division. The uncashed tickets get by law 128A, section 5A, we have to wait a year before they can be given out. So what we do is Doug O'Donnell has met with the parimutuel officer at Suffolk Downs to go over. They had 4 unclaimed tickets, and he has checked with them and verified them. So the recommendation for that is to pay those individuals, and it comes to a total of $407. So we need a vote on that one.
So I move that we request, that we approve the request of Sterling Suffolk Race Course for tickets, payments from 2016 for a total of $407.
Motion's made and second.
Second.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? Dr. Lightbaum, is this a reflection of the decrease in race days in Suffolk Downs for the first time, or have we had very little outs?
It's
in the
very
past?
similar to last year. Last year it was $471, and it was 3 claimed tickets. So it was very similar.
Yep.
And it's interesting, the amounts of unclaimed ticket recovery that we're going to go through for the next 4 items. Again, the numbers were very similar for the tracks that are, have live racing. Raynham went down a little bit, but the other, Wonderland, Plain Ridge, and Suffolk, those numbers all were very close to.
Very
what
close
they
to
were
the same
last year.
years. Okay. All right. So motion's made and second. Commissioner Stebbins,
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby,
Aye.
and Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
So item B is recovery of the unclaimed tickets for 2016 from Suffolk Downs. So they had a total amount of $218,121.67, and we subtract the 407 from that to give us a total of $217,714,167 that we would recover from Suffolk on the unclaimed tickets, and that requires a vote.
So I recommend that the commission approve the payment of $217,714.67 from Sterling Suffolk Race Course to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the 216 unclaimed winnings.
Second.
Any motions made and second? Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Can we put up signs that say, keep your ticket, check your ticket?
It's always a little
So,
surprising
it's
how many we
surprising
have,
how many people,
much it adds up to.
Yeah. And again, this is similar to prior years, just roughly.
Yeah, last year it came, let's see, to 208,000, a little over 208,000 this year, 217,000, so it's very simple. That might be a reflection of the added race days. We had 8 in 16 and
Right.
we had a little bit more than the
Right.
year before.
Okay. So motions made and second. Commissioner Stebbins,
Yes.
Commissioner Cameron,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby,
Aye.
and Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
Okay, so item C is recovery of the unclaimed winnings from Wonderland, and that total came to $20,514.54. And again, we need a vote on that one.
Mr. Chair, I move that the commission approve the payment of $20,514.54 from Wonderland Greyhound Park to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for 2016 unclaimed winnings.
Second?
Any discussion? Motion's made and second. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
Just as a point of interest, for 2015, the Wonderland amount was a little over 200, over 17,000, and this
Right.
for 16 it was 20,000. So the next item is the same issue for Plain Ridge, and the outs came to a total of 174,558.68, and again we need to vote on that measure. In 15, Plain Ridge's total came to a little over 158,000. So.
Could that be attributed a little bit to increased activity, or am I reading a little too much into figures?
It might be, and also they did have a significant, a number of added days. So
Right.
I think that might have contributed also.
Right. Okay, is there a motion?
I move that the commission approve the payment of $174,558.68 from the Plain Ridge Racecourse to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for 2016 unclaimed winnings.
Second.
Motion's made and second. Any more discussion? Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
So the next item is for the same idea for Raynham Taunton. This year, the amount for 2016 recovery is $168,414.50. And just for, since you were interested, in 15, the return amount was $180,953. So that one has gone down a little bit this year. And again, this requires a vote.
I move that the commission approve the payment of $168,414.50 from Raynham Taunton Massasoit Greyhound Associations to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the 2016 unclaimed winnings.
Second.
Any more discussion? Motion's made and second. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
So our next item, item F, is a promotional fund payment request for Suffolk Downs. Bruce Barnett is here today representing Suffolk if there's any questions of him. And I'll turn it over to Doug O'Donnell for that item and the local aid payments.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What you have in front of you is a request for reimbursement from the Suffolk Downs Promotional Trust Fund. It is for project number SPT 2011-1, and the total amount of the request is $185,219.60. This will actually be the balance due on this particular project, so there will be a zero balance. And in the trust fund, after this is paid out, with your approval, we'll have $2,367.54. This is primarily for advertising and promotional items for the year 2011. We're going back that far with this particular project, but we will need your vote on that.
Doug, I remember at least, tell me if I'm getting my years correct. Have we approved payments from these trust fund for years prior, for years after 2011?
After 2011, no, not for the promotional trust fund. We have
Okay.
not. No,
So
we're staying in sequence on an annual basis.
Okay.
So the next, in fact, Mr. Tuttle had submitted a letter, and I believe it's the second letter in the packet. You'll see where the next project is for 2012, which we will be requesting a reimbursement for, once the funds have built up enough that we can do that.
Right, right. So there will always be a bit of, quite a bit of a backlog, I suppose, right?
Yes,
It's a
there-
function of backlog, not a function of, when these promotional monies are expended.
right, they, back then, in these particular years, they were spending a lot more on promoting racing than the
Right.
promotional funds that were coming in.
Right.
So it's kind of on the flip side with the Capital Improvement Trust Fund. They have, they have an excess amount of money in the cap fund,
Right.
and they're, doing projects now to try to expend that money.
Doug, remind me as to what the origin of the funds in the trust fund are. Is it a statutory?
Yes, it is, yes. And it was done primarily for the purpose of promoting the track. We're basically holding the funds for them, so we will know that they will be, improvements with the capital expenditures and advertising and promotional items for promoting the track.
There's how many funds that come out of those takeout?
It's a capital promo fund, and there's the racing stabilization fund comes out with the dog handles, which is a completely separate issue.
Yeah, this is all statutory. I guess the equivalent in gaming is the 3% of gross gaming revenues that they're required to put back in, but it's not through a trust fund, it's really through a plan. This is a particular quirk of racing.
Doug, I'm sorry.
Please.
Doug, the letter from Mr. Tuttle references 2011, 2012, 2013. Are we holding promotional monies for 14, 15, 16, and 17?
They haven't submitted anything for those
Okay.
years as of yet.
Okay.
But again,
So
it's the monies that are actually have to build before we can disperse anything. Okay. Any more discussion? Do you hear a motion?
So I move that we approve the request for reimbursement by Suffolk Downs Promotional Trust Fund in the amount of $185,219.60 as outlined in the memo dated February 7th, 2018.
Second.
Any more discussion? Motion's made and second. Commissioner Stebbins,
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby,
Aye.
and Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Burnett. Are those
The next item is the local aid.
okay?
I will do that one also.
Okay, so what we have here is the quarterly local aid distribution. These are monies that are submitted to the local towns where racing is taking place and simulcasting. These are done on a quarterly basis, and it's 6 months in arrears. So this is for the December 31st payment, which would be April, May, and June of 2017. Total amount of handles and the 0.35% that's going to be paid to the towns is $245,768.79. And on the second page, you will see the computation sheet, which has each city and town listed as to what the disbursements will be to them, totaling that amount, and we will need your vote on it.
I have again, maybe I have this question the same time every time, but has some of these monies changed dramatically with the change in activity at Suffolk Downs in terms of live racing, or is this really more driven by the simulcasting?
It's with the live racing, it does increase a little bit. So this is April, May, and June. So
Oh.
we're going to see more of a bump in this quarter. It's 245,000, whereas I believe last quarter was 166,000. So during the live racing season, you're going to see the handles higher, so you'll see more of a disbursement.
Right. And what is just an order of magnitude of the total every year that gets distributed from these monies to the cities and towns? $1 million, like four times these amounts?
It
varies.
There's a cap at 1.1 million, but we haven't reached that since
Right.
I'd say back in 2008 or 9.
Right.
Last year was $754,000.
Okay.
So this year it may be a little more because there was a little bit of an increase for the handles.
Right.
But it stays within that realm right there.
Yep. Okay. If there's no more questions for Mr. O'Donnell, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the commission approve the local aid quarterly payment dated December 31st, 2017 for $245,768.79 with the distribution as outlined in the packet.
Second.
Motion's made and second. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
So that concludes the number 5, the Racing Division, and we move on to the Legal Division, General Counsel Blue.
Good
and
afternoon,
Deputy
Commissioners.
Counsel
Good afternoon.
Crosby.
Good afternoon.
As Executive Director Bedrosian mentioned, the Commission has been seeing and will continue to see regulations, both new and amendments to existing regulations, as we move towards the opening of our Category 1 casinos. I also want to advise the Commission that oftentimes when an issue arises, that requires amendments to more than one regulation, because oftentimes issues go across various regulations, and the regulations are in fact interconnected. So sometimes, for example, we'll talk about 6A, if, an amendment to address a certain matter has to impact a couple of different regulations. So we are very mindful of trying to make sure that we track issues through the entire body of our regulatory regulations. So on 6A, we're asking you today to let us begin the promulgation process for amendments to the alcohol beverage license. And as you recall, the legislature gave the commission the ability to allow licensees to apply for additional alcohol beverage service between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m. if requested, and only on service on the gaming floor, and the commission approves it. The purpose of these amendments are simply to conform the statute and the regulation. There is no other change to that. We have, since this is beginning, we have not put this out for public comment yet, but we will and take it through the process. So there is time for the commissioners to consider it, to look at those comments as they come in. We will have our normal public hearing on that. But what we're asking you today is to approve the small business impact statement and the amendments to these regulations, and to start the promulgation process.
Okay, any questions for Counsel Blue?
Yeah, more just a comment. Obviously, this was, the statute changed, allowing a licensee to request beverage service from 2 to 4 in the morning. I think we want to be cognizant about the fact we did hear from some law enforcement groups on this issue. I also found a letter from Senator Lewis, who at the time was chair of the Senate Public Health Committee, outlining the senator's concerns about this change. As I went through the regs, and obviously it's more, as you pointed out, just to fold into our regulations what the statute says, and it's up to us on the other side to come up for a process for reviewing this. We may want to consider, or at least have staff consider, some element of a public hearing for a license application. If we were going to open up a bar in any town across Massachusetts, you have to have a public hearing. It would seem to make sense that we would fold that in somewhere into our evaluation of that type of request.
Yeah, we are, Commissioner, good point. We're obviously working that in conversations with all our licensees, and recognize the vital importance of public input. But to be clear, as both you and General Counsel Blue have said, literally we're trying to conform with the law right now.
Right.
But we do recognize potentially a very sensitive issue, and we would anticipate the commission would want public input on this, no question about it. So we're also trying to build that in, as I talked about my opening timeline, we're trying to back that up to fit in, so there's enough process, so the commission has enough information to eventually make a decision. This isn't the traditional two-way process.
Yeah,
And so that the record is clear that if our affirmative vote on this does not reflect a vote in favor of our establishments.
Absolutely not. It's just literally that the laws change and our regs need to conform with the law, reserving the authority to be exercised or not at a later time.
Right.
If and when we receive an application.
Correct.
that was the
Also
point I
correct.
was going to make. We
Also
first have to get an application.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So either way, our regs will conform to the law, and then we'll go through another process, substantive process.
And all the comments that we receive, will continue to file them appropriately whenever we have to come back and make decisions along these lines. Okay, so if there's no more discussion, do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I move that the commission approve the amendments to 205 CMR 136 and 138.12 as included in the packet, and authorize the staff to take the steps necessary to file the regulation with the Secretary of the Commonwealth and to proceed with the regulation promulgation process. Further, I move that the commission approve for filing the associated small business impact statement as included in the packet.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? Motion's made and second. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you. Item 6B, with the permission of Executive Director Bedrosian and the Commission, I would like to defer action on 6B. We have had some more discussion amongst ourselves and our colleagues, and we think there's some more work to be done on this. So we will bring this back to you at a later time with more information and a new redraft of the regulation.
That's fine by me, and looks like others. Was this, what part of the promulgation process was there? Did we go to a
This one,
public
we
hearing?
haven't started at all.
We haven't started,
No, we
okay.
have not. We had a discussion in front of the commission at the last meeting,
Right.
and we're just trying to get the right reg language together. So
Okay.
we'll bring it back to you to start the process.
So it hasn't even started the process?
That's right, has
Okay.
not.
That's harmless, so up to item C.
Item 6C, we are asking for you to approve the small business impact statement for the changes to 205 CMR 152. This is the excluded persons list. We brought this regulation and the amendments to the commission before. You asked us to make changes. We've done that. This time is just for the small business impact statement, so we can take this through the process.
Okay. Any more questions, or any questions for Council Blue?
No, I'm happy to see the changes that were made.
I wasn't, but this is for the small business impact statement.
So I move that the commission approve for filing the small business impact statement as included in the packet relative to the amendments 205 CMR 152 involving individuals excluded from the gaming establishment that were previously approved for filing.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
Item 6D is the small business impact statement for the SER registration exemption language. As you recall, we brought that back to amend that section because we wanted that to conform with the law as well. We've made those changes. You have approved the amendments to that section. Now we're just asking for approval of the small business impact statement so we can take this through the process too.
Okay. And does this small business impact statement, is this an affirmative one, or do we feel that no small business is affected?
I don't believe there's any small business. They're individuals, and it will actually make their lives simpler because they won't be registered, so.
Excellent point.
Mhm.
That's right. Okay. Any more discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I move that the commission approve for filing the small business impact statement as included in the packet relative to the amendments to 205 CMR 134.03 involving the exemption of certain gaming service employees from the registration requirement that was previously approved for filing.
Second.
Any more discussion? Motion's made and second. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
Item 6E is the final version of the amendments and the amended small business impact statements for a host of regulations. There's 4 of them. They all conform and they all work together. We made these amendments in the past. We have taken this through the hearing process. And this is ready for final promulgation. So we're just asking you to approve the final version that you have in your package today and the amended small business impact statement that goes with it.
And remind us, these amendments were as a result of the public hearing? Or
There were
other?
some, I'll defer to Deputy General Counsel Grossman on the details of those amendments. I think we got some amendments to public hearing, but mostly through our internal discussion process and discussions with the commissioners as well.
Okay.
We did actually receive 2 separate sets of comments, one from Plainridge Park Casino, one from MGM Resorts, and they pertain to separate areas of this particular proposal. So starting from the beginning, the first pertains to the amendment to the regulation governing the gaming day. And the comment in your packet from MGM Resorts asserts that our proposal would cause them a hardship and requests that we not make that change. In fact, we allow them to set their own gaming day for the reasons set forth in their letter. I've asked Mr. Baroga to join us here today to explain exactly why we put this proposal forward in the first place and how it affects our operations here, if we may.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
So within our initial review, our discussions with IGT and taking into account the existing gaming day of 6 a.m. and adding a separate gaming day to manage multiple casinos is a substantial upgrade to the system. Our system, which is IGT Intelligent, which operates in other jurisdictions such as Pennsylvania and Maryland, in those jurisdictions, that system only operates under one gaming system. So taking into account those other jurisdictions and operations, this would be a substantial upgrade for the MGC. And, we need to take into account the management, the upgrades, the testing associated with this upgrade. We would basically be reinventing the wheel for IGT Intelligent.
I'm not sure I quite follow the hardship piece. Can you perhaps try to explain it one more time?
So within Intelligent, there's 50 reports that the commission has available to the commission. And within the reports, within the calculations of those reports, you have that gaming day time frame identified in those reports, so that every day at 6 a.m. the system identifies the meters and basically calculates your invoice for each casino property.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's associated individually with each report, that would correlate to IGT updating each report, all 50 reports I mentioned, along with other reporting of the system.
So the hardship is one of monetary value to all of us because we'd have to upgrade, including the licensees, because we would have to significantly upgrade the software.
Yes, it's a significant upgrade that could take.
So what is the alternative, and what have we either changed or kept? still trying to follow the regulation.
So at present, PPC operates on a set gaming day in accordance with our regulations. So we haven't had any issues there. The MGM gaming day would be different, and I'm not even sure what the win one would be ultimately. And my understanding is that it's very difficult to program, and this is basically what he just said, to have different gaming days in our CMS without be a significant expense for us to update that. And I obviously can't explain why that is exactly, but
Is it because it has to get to the millisecond or whatever, 5:59:59?
Yeah, probably
An
like
atomic
that. I don't
clock
know.
or something?
I don't know, but it would cost a lot of money and a lot of time to have on our CMS separate gaming days for the different gaming licensees. We're unique in that we have a CMS, of course. So many jurisdictions don't face this issue, and they can have different gaming days. They don't have to, deal with that element of the problem. We have a CMS that wasn't programmed to handle, as I understand it, or accommodate different gaming days for different licensees. So that's the issue we face. As you identified, it's really a financial hardship, if you will. We'd have to figure out exactly what it would cost to make such an upgrade, as compared to the hardship that MGM has identified. So it may be prudent at the moment to take a step back on this piece and see if we can gather a little more information on these issues. This part of it just came up.
Well, but I think you explained it pretty well. I think I understand the issue, and so we're changing the regs to accommodate that, right? So there will not be this.
We're changing the reg to set a uniform time frame.
Right.
MGM has expressed concern that they can't live with it. My recommendation would be that we move forward with this change and we figure out how to address it, whether it requires some work on our part or some work on MGM's part. I think we have a system, and a uniform gaming day is probably very important to us from an accounting perspective. So while I appreciate their comments, my suggestion to the commission would be that we approve this change to go forward, and we can meet with our licensees to determine what we need to do to make it work for everybody. And if we have to come back with another change, we can. But I think at this point, we've gotten fairly far down this road in this process, and we should have a uniform gaming day.
Have we heard from the licensees yet as to exactly why this is difficult for them? I mean, what their hardships are? Have we had those?
They operate, and my understanding is MGM operates on a 3 a.m. to 3 a.m. gaming day. So there would be some necessity on their part to change their accounting to match our 6 to 6. We have not heard, I don't believe, from Wynn, have we?
We haven't heard from Wynn. It wouldn't be a problem for Penn because they operate on the time that we're
they're
prescribing. MGM described their hardship in the letter here. They essentially say they have an entity that kind of reconciles all of their gaming days across the country and otherwise, and they like to do it on a set time schedule, essentially.
I actually
Did we hear from Wynn about this?
No, the answer was no, Steve. I actually see Jed Nosal shaking his head. Would you like to comment on this, Jed, or do you want to? No, you might not necessarily be prepared to do that now, but. Yep.
Thanks. Listen, I'm not going to be able to offer anything more on the technology. I think we set forth in our letter the hardships to MGM that are going to occur to this due to the fact that they want to integrate this property into their financial shared services model. They've been planning for that. This regulation has been in place since 2015. I think that we certainly ought to go back and explore sort of some of these financial issues. My general understanding is we can do certainly a comparison of what it may cost to make changes to the CMS, which I understand would probably be a cost borne by the licensees as well. And this is a pretty significant issue for MGM, again, around what their planning was. And I would also suggest that since the gaming day right now is a required part of the internal controls, which have to be approved by the commission, if the commission wants uniformity, it can accomplish that essentially through the approval of the internal controls. I don't see the necessity for making this change right now from a process perspective. And I think the cost issues are one that we ought to have an opportunity to, at least, as Attorney Grossman said, to be able to straighten out.
Jed, may I ask?
Yes, please.
Would you know what's happening, what they do in Maryland?
I'm sorry, Director Bedrosian, I do not.
It seems to me that the.
Hold on.
Mr. Zuniga,
Yes, go ahead,
Mike,
Chairman Crosby.
again, I couldn't hear everything that everybody said quite perfectly, but I'm inclined to agree with Attorney Grossman that the cost of this is going to be borne by either all of the licensees or possibly by just one of the licensees, depending on how we work it out. And they're the ones who are asking for the change. So it seems to me that if the primary issue is a financial one, it would make sense to take a step back and really assess it from a financial standpoint and do the cost-benefit analysis after we have that well in hand.
I guess I'm concerned about our time frame here. We have an opening to accommodate, and this, in one way or another, this issue has to move forward, correct?
Let me ask my folks, and this might go to Floyd specifically, do we have time to quickly do that analysis and come back to the commission with more information?
Yes, we do have the time, but if the decision is to manage multiple gaming days, updating the system and having it ready for your MGM opening would be at jeopardy. So we would have to basically mitigate the risk and go with an opening of a 6 a.m. while working on the updates of the system and correlating to a later update of, say, 3 a.m.
I think I'm hearing you don't have time then to make the appropriate changes in order to.
Well, I'm hearing it's very tight.
Determine the issue. Determine
very
whether or
tight.
not we can do it, correct?
Now, the current regulation states 6 a.m.
Well, I don't think there's a particular time in it. We do 6 a.m. because that's what PPC does, and that's how we've built our CMS. Is that correct?
That's right. So the current regulation, just to set the stage, basically says the gaming licensees can have whatever gaming day they want. They just need to tell us what it's going to be. The thinking at the time was that it didn't really matter to us. I don't recall that we had the CMS in place, or at least we were aware of this particular issue at the time. Since, of course, we've been up and running, we have the CMS in place, and we've inquired as to whether it's feasible to run different gaming days on our system, and learned that the way it's presently configured, it is not feasible, and that it would take a number of upgrades to accomplish that. We have been given a figure as to how much that would cost, and it would be a lot of money. So, that's kind of where we are at the moment. So the change that is being proposed is that we move from an open gaming day where the licensees can just tell us what their gaming day will be, to one that must be essentially 6 to 6.
Doesn't the statute speak to 6 a.m.? Am I remembering?
Well, that's they're open from 6 a.m. to 5:59. So I mean, it does track the day. Our casino day in our statute is tracked in our reconciliation system. So yes.
But conceivably, those could be different. When we make our accounting and when they're open.
Yes.
So I think we do anticipate, and I need to work with the chairman on this scheduling of further meetings in February. I think we do anticipate a potential further meeting in February. Given that in the confusion, I would say let's give it one more meeting.
Yep.
Let us go back and try and make some quick. I don't know how much more information we're going to get, but at least try and explore that and come back and say we can't, and maybe find out what happens in Maryland, and come back with a little more information. But I take what Floyd says seriously. The time frame of if we have to change it, we're going to 6 a.m. and then we're noodling back 3 a.m. I think we should all be on the same page, including who's paying for it and the associated potential risks. I don't know if we get any more information from the Wynn folks now about what they if they even thought about this, quite frankly. Because I'd hate to come back a third time and say, guess what, we got more money to spend for a 4 a.m.
Yeah, no, there's enough reasons to try to postpone this for at least, only a couple of weeks until the next meeting. I say we reach out to Win. What if they have also a 3 a.m. day, for example? And then in which case,
or a 2 a.m. day.
or at 2 a.m. and
Yeah.
then and look at alternatives. And by the way, what would it take in terms of cost and hardship for Penn to change to 3 a.m. or 2 a.m., whatever the case may be? Of course, this should be done as quickly as possible, given that pending opening. But I seem to be hearing quite a bit of reason to at least postpone this promulgation at this point, and we can always come back to it in the following meeting.
But we'll work as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I'm not averse to the to a postponement, provided that it doesn't place in jeopardy the timely opening of MGM. I was struck by the language in MGM's letter being so similar to Floyd's rationale for the opposite. They're asking for the flexibility to designate the gaming day, and that the current proposal places in jeopardy MGM's ability to, I'm now reading, effectively integrate MGM into its operations, creating a one-off from its other properties. Whereas Floyd is saying, and I'm sympathetic to that for our purposes, our CMS purposes, it's very important to have a uniformity between the different operators. So
We can, Commissioner McDonald make a good point. We can also call Maryland and Pennsylvania, 2 jurisdictions I know use CMSs, and just inquire.
Yeah, Commissioners, we actually have a call scheduled later this week with Maryland Lottery to determine exactly how they handled the MGM National Harbor opening.
Good.
Okay.
And they also have Intelligent, right?
Yes.
They have not only Intelligent, but MGM.
Yes.
Right.
And more than one casino.
Yeah.
Correct. And to add based off a confirmation from IGT, the Maryland end of gaming date is 6 a.m.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll find out that information. It sounds like we hope we can come back to the commission at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll defer action on 6E. 6F is the final amendments and the amended small business impact statement for the gaming school change. This is when we clarified how much of the responsible gaming training needed to be done. So it only has to be done once, not every time you take a course. And so we would like your approval to move this through the final promulgation process.
Okay, any more questions or comments for Council Blue?
I move that the commission approve the amended small business impact statement and final version of 205 CMR 137.02 as included in the packet, and authorize the staff to take all steps necessary to file the regulation with the Secretary of the Commonwealth and complete the regulation promulgation process.
Second.
Motion's made on second. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously.
And that's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. That concludes number 6. Next item is the Commissioner's update, our standing item. Are there any items to discuss from commissioners?
Not me.
Commissioner Crosby?
Nope, nothing for me.
Okay. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made on second to adjourn. Commissioner Stebbins? Aye. Commissioner Cameron?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Crosby?
No, this is too much fun.
I'm going to take that as an aye. And Commissioner Zuniga votes aye. The ayes have it unanimously. And we're adjourned. Thank you.
Nice job.
Back to the beach, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.